Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Sean with EnglishAlready.com. I'm so happy to have you here today because today's topic we're going to address a very important pronunciation issue, and that is the pronunciation issue of the ED as part of regular verb pronunciation in the past. So no doubt you're here because you want to improve your pronunciation. Sometimes when we're speaking in public with native speakers especially, we may feel a little insecure as to whether or not our pronunciation is correct. We've chosen the past tense of regular verbs as a topic today because the truth is many people make mistakes when they're speaking English using this topic. So what is a regular verb? Many of you may already know this, but a regular verb are all of the verbs that use ed as part of their past tense form and also part of the past participle form. There are actually three ways to pronounce the ed as part of a regular verb in the past. But there are three ways, but they're not three options, and that's where the problem can sometimes come in. Essentially, there are two mistakes that people make when they're pronouncing the ed, when they're reading, when they're speaking. And the two mistakes are putting the wrong pronunciation on the wrong word or simply pronouncing nothing different at all. Today we're going to be talking about the way to make this lesson as simple as possible. So what are those three sounds that the ed makes in the past tense? They are the following. T, such as walked. So we say walk in the present. The past tense, the pronunciation is walked. The second one is d, just like a D. So if we had the word clean, then you would pronounce cleaned, you see? And the third one is id. So the id that's part of the word did, well, that's exactly the sound that the ed makes on some words. For example, paint. So you have paint in the present, the past tense is painted. So now you can see there are three sounds, they're not optional. You have the t, d, and id. So since we want to keep this lesson as simple as possible so you can get as much benefit as you can, we're going to talk about the one that people have most problems in, and that is the pronunciation of the id sound. Frequently, people put this sound in the wrong place. So what is an example of a word with this? We mentioned already paint, painted, but we also have words like start. So in the simple past, it would be started. The reason we're not going to talk too much about the pronunciation of T and D as pronunciation sounds is because really people don't make this mistake as frequently as they make the mistake with id. In fact, I've been teaching English for 20 years already, and I have corrected people using or making this mistake very few times. But the mistake with id being used in the wrong place, it's a regular correction that I make as a teacher. So how would it sound if we're using the id in the wrong place? Well, here's a very, very common example that I hear. Probably many of you have heard of the web page or the application LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the correct pronunciation. In fact, linked sounds like T in the past, but you will hear many people saying LinkedIn. But for sure, because of the structure of the word, we know that the id sound is not correct when placed on this particular word. So we have to be very careful. So how can we recognize when we use id, the sound id, on a past tense regular verb and not the other two sounds? Well, the good news is that this rule is very simple and easy to remember. There are two things you can look for. First of all, any regular verb that finishes with the final consonant, T or D, you're going to pronounce like id. Okay? So if it ends in a T as the final consonant, or it ends in a D as a final consonant, you're going to pronounce it with the sound id. Again, we can use the word end. How would it sound in the past tense then? End it. Paint, paint it. Okay? Start, started. So it's very important not to put that sound on the wrong word, or it sounds very bad. So we want to work hard because it's very noticeable to native speakers if we put that sound on the wrong word. Okay? There is another factor. You can remember also that when we use id on a regular verb, it actually adds an additional syllable to the word. Do you hear how that sounds? Let's repeat the word paint. So paint is a one-syllable word, but when I add the ed, paint it. But that's not true with the other words. So if I have the word love and I pronounce it in the past, love is one syllable, loved, still one syllable. So only the id adds an additional syllable to the word. Do you see how that is? So you have a couple of things that you should try to remember, and that is all of the words that end with T or D, and, or as the final consonant, and that it adds an additional syllable to the word. Okay? So if you work on these, it will really help you a lot when you're speaking, and it will also help you have more confidence when you speak English. So let's look at a couple of examples to see how the ed sounds when we're speaking more naturally, okay? Here's an example. When Janice got to the office yesterday, she parked her car, she walked into the office, she phoned her boss immediately and told him that she had accepted a new job. So you have 3 past tense verbs with all which have different sounds. So you can practice this one as well. Here's another. Saturday afternoon, I cleaned my car, I walked my dog, and I invited some friends to my house for lunch. So here are a couple of examples, and of course you can create your own examples for the purpose of practicing, and that's really what you should do. But let's see some verbs. I'm going to put a few verbs now under their correct pronunciation list, and you can follow along and practice with me. So we have the T pronunciation, that's one. So let's look at some words that fall under this category. Let's begin. Talk, talked. Like, liked. Escape, escaped. Announce, announced. Now we can see some words that come under the D sound. For example, enjoy, enjoyed. Order, ordered. Love, loved. Use, used. And now let's look at also a few additional words that come under the id sound. And remember, we add an additional syllable in the past tense. So we have note, noted. Trust, trusted. Want, wanted. And need, needed. And of course, you can find countless others that all fall into each of these categories so that you can practice. So as a final review, we've learned today that there are 3 principal sounds that the ed makes in the past tense. It's the t, d, and id. And of those 3, the vast majority of the mistakes are made with the id sound. So this is the one that you can focus your attention on when you're practicing. We're going to play a little game right now. It's not very long, but what I'd like you to do is take a piece of paper, or maybe on your computer screen, and write down these three symbols. This T, the T sound, the D, D, and the id sound. Once you do that, I'm going to list a number of words randomly, and you're going to put them in the category where you feel they should be, according to my pronunciation. Are you ready to do it? Let's do it. Okay, so if you are ready, you have your T, your D, and also your id sound on your paper or on your computer screen. So please write these words where you think they should go according to my pronunciation. Let's begin. Opened, picked, missed, hunted, saved, waited, relaxed, jumped, agreed, arrested, studied, invented, called, looked, printed, rained, worried, and finally, laughed. So that's it. What you can do is replay this part of the video if you missed some of the words, and I'm going to also write on the screen the correct answers. So everyone, I hope you benefited from the video today and that you can also improve your pronunciation of regular verbs in the past tense in English. And I know that you can do this if you just practice. We don't have to necessarily read a lot of rules, but do pay particular attention to the rule of the id sound. Okay? So don't forget to do that, and please, if you enjoyed this video today, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Have a good day.